Now we're on Daf Peheyamid Beis. Brisa Ketani Shona. The Brisa says explicitly that you repeat the plowing. It doesn't say that in the Mishnah. Holokash. We can reconcile the apparent contradiction between the Mishnah and the Brisa because Kan Be'avuda, the Mishnah is talking about a field that's already been cultivated. Therefore, there's no necessity to plow it a second time around. So the field was already plowed at some considerable time before the first year. So therefore, you plow the field in the first year, and that's already the second plowing. You leave it fallow for the remainder of that year. In the second year, you don't do plowing at the beginning of the second year in the summertime, but right before you plant. Kan b'she'eno avuda. The Bryce is dealing with a field that hadn't been plowed at some time before the first year. And therefore, he's going to have to make up for that plowing by plowing it in the second year. My Havi Allah. So how often do we have to plow in the second year? Tashma, let's derive the conclusion that we don't need that second plowing in the second year. The Sanya from a Brisa that near Chetzia v'zorech Chetzia, near Chetzia v'zorech Chetzia. All right, this is complicated, but we'll try our best. How are we doing on the clock? We have about 7 minutes. We'll see what we can accomplish. I was hoping to get to the Mishnah. Let's see. In the first year, he plows and then he leaves near. Near, we said, was when he finishes plowing, he leaves it exposed, so to speak, because the plowing creates furrows in the ground and the rain will seep in. So he'll do near on half the field and he'll plant the other half of the field. That's year number one. Now we get to year number two. Near Chetzia v'zorech Chetzia. So again, he does the plowing. And the half of the field that he had planted on the first year, now he does near. He leaves it fallow. That half that he left fallow in the first year, he now plants. Anyway, we see clearly that in the second year, there's no additional plowing because that half of the field that he plowed on the first year, now on the second year, is just for planting. You don't need a second plowing. Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Now we're talking about barley for the Omer. Ein mevinas Omer elaminas sados hamudramos sheberetz Yisrael, from the southern fields in Eretz Yisrael. That's where we're going to bring the barley for the Omer. Shebehen chama zorachas v'chama umehen chama shokas. Because the sun rises on the southern part of the east and sets on the southern side of the west. So there's plenty of sun on the southern side. And that's where we're going to take the barley for the Omer. Tanya Nami Hoch. We have a Bryce to support Rabbi Yochanan. Avashol Omer. Omer Hayaba mi bikas base makle kibas shalosh seinoi. So the field was large in an area of 3 sa'as. The amount of land needed to sow 3 sa'as of grains, one base saw equals 2,500 square amos. So this field measured 7,500 square amos. So you could produce now, in such an amount of land, 3 sa'as of grains. The southern Madred, this Haisa, and in those areas, it was on the south, so you got all the sunlight. Uba, and on this Sada, Chamas Orachas Menu Chamas Shokas, and he did Nir Chetzia, Zoreh Chetzia, Nir Chetzia, Zoreh Chetzia. Rav Chilkiah Bar Tuvi Havale Karno Diara. Well, this is as far as I got in preparing. Rav Chilkiah had a corner plot of land, but it was located in the south, near Chetzi V'Zor Chetzia, near Chetzi V'Zor Chetzia. He did everything right. V'Ovda al Chad Trey. Good. So he applied the method in which the Chachamim had recommended, and as a result, the field yielded twice a productivity. Through this split field version of alternating planting and lying fallow, Rav Chilkiah's field yielded twice as much grain as a field that is completely worked 1 year and completely left fallow the next year. Umazbin lehu lechite lismida. He sold the grain for the finest wheat flour. I guess it was converted into the finest wheat flour. He sold the grain to wealthy individuals who could afford high quality produce. So we see that his success proves that the Gemara's regimen or recommendation of planting half and half, half and half, produce a crop that's superior, both qualitatively and quantitatively. Mishnah says in Misliya Psula, if the flour became wormy, it's completely invalid. Tanarabanan, Soles Shesliya Ruba Psula. So fine flour whose majority became wormy is invalid. We don't know what the word majority is referring to exactly. V'chitin Shesliu Ruban Psulos. And wheat kernels whose majority became wormy are invalid. For example, one bought an isaron of flour for an ordinary mincha, or sufficient wheat kernels to yield an isaron of flour for the mincha, and a majority of the flour or kernels became wormy. The offering is disqualified by dint of, like it's a balmum. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah always asks the real kashas. Berov chita or berov sa'ah? Is the rove a rove in each kernel, or is it the rove of the entire sa'ah, the entire field? So if the majority of the flour became wormy, the entire sack is disqualified, because we assume that the rat essentially infested the entire sack. Wheat kernels, on the other hand, are individual entities, and each kernel is separately infested. Hence, the rule of majority can be discussed and applied in various ways. Rabbi Yirmiyah thus inquires as to which particular majority of the brisa Did the rice have in mind? Did it mean that the sa'a becomes disqualified only when the majority of every kernel is infested with worms? Or does it suffice if a majority of the sa'a becomes infested, even though some kernels are unaffected? According to the first possibility, two conditions must exist before an entire saw of wheat kernels become disqualified. Number one, every kernel in the saw must be wormy, and the infestation must affect a majority of each kernel. So again, there's a majority in each kernel and a majority in the saw. And then and only then, with those two majorities of worminess, then we disqualify the whole saw. However, according to the second possibility, if a majority of the kernels in the saw is wormy, even if the infestation does not affect the majority of each of those kernels. So in other words, each kernel might have some degree of infestation, but it's not a majority of the kernel. Nevertheless, as at the end of the day, the majority of the kernels in the saw are wormy, even though we don't have that condition that most of the kernel is wormy, that's enough to be considered wormy, and it's possible. Take by Rav Hikdishon Mahu Sheyilke Alehem. If a person is Magdish, a Baal Mum, he gets Malchus for that. And that's a Sugya Masechta Tmura. And here he went ahead and he was Magdish, wormy wheat kernels for a Korban Mincha. So therefore, should I say Kevin de Pasil Kibal Mumdom? He has status of Baal Mum, and it's possible. Therefore, he gets Malchus. O Dilma Ein Balmum Elabibehema, the whole institution of a Balmum, and therefore the whole lav which generates Malchus for being Magdish of Balmum, that only applies to animals. Take we don't know. Tanan Hasan, we learned in the Mishnah in Masechta Midos, Kol Eitz Shenimtze Botolas. If you have wood and a worm is found in the wood, Posel Agam Mizbech, we can't use it as wood on the Mizbech, on the Eish of the Mizbech. Using wormy wood as part of the Eish on the Mizbech is a violation of the prohibition of unblemished they shall be. If you have dry wood that became wormy, go over kosher. You can scrape it until you remove the wormy section, and the remainder is valid. Boy Ravik Disho. Let's say he had wormy wood, and he was magdish it. Ma'ushi Yilkala Mishum Balmum. Cave of the Apostle, Kibalmum Dami. O Dilma Ain Balmum Elabibema. Take same suffix that we had before from Rava in the case of wormy wheat kernels, we have in wormy wood. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Pei Hey Amud Beis, which Emir Shem will cover tomorrow.